And a good day to you, Explorer Nation. John Linsky, your ambassador for alumni affairs, here with season 6. Yes, 6. Episode 1 of Looking Back with Linsky. And as we look back, we're actually going to be kind of looking ahead in this episode because we're joined by one of the up and coming members of the Columbus faculty. A proud graduate of the class of 2010, member of the history department. He's done a little bit of everything, which is what you do to climb the ladder at Columbus High School. The name speaks for itself, the legacy, and we're going to discuss what it's like to be a younger McKeon at Columbus High School. So without any further ado, please welcome Mr. Cody McKeon. Cody, thanks for being here today.
No, thanks for having me on. I'm excited. I've been a big fan of this podcast, so I'm ready to jump in.
All right, then let's jump in indeed. You know, Cody, everybody takes a different route to Columbus High School. You know, no matter who we interview, how they got there is their own story. Your story is a little bit of a long distance story. You and your older brother as well. So why don't we start about how you ended up coming down to Columbus from Connecticut. Your brother Chris, an absolute character himself, graduated in 2003. You tell us how you ended up coming down. You came down in junior year, which is not always easy. Go ahead, Cody.
So since my dad's been down here for, since I think it was like 91, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure. We had the choice as two young boys to, at the end of 8th grade, if we wanted to come down here and be at Columbus, that was our choice. And my brother kind of took that opportunity right away and got down here and jumped in as a freshman. I was a little bit more stubborn, a little bit more hard-headed, and I decided that Connecticut was the place for me. And I was up there for the beginning half of my high school career. Without, getting into any crazy details, I was definitely underachieving. My academics weren't where they were supposed to be. My behavior wasn't where it was supposed to be.
Okay.
So it was time to get down here and get under Dad's supervision. So I came down here as a junior and jumped right into it. And I'll tell you, never looked back since.
Yeah, I remember when Spud, as he was, affectionately called. I mean, man, he jumped right in. You're right, and he was with a great group of guys. The class of 2003. Class of 2010 is equally a bunch of characters. And so how long did it take you to acclimate to the ways of Columbus High School?
Well, that's actually a funny story because it's a pretty defined moment. I got into Charlie Frazier's math class, and he had his seat set up in rows of 3. So I sit in the last seat of a row. And in front of me was a kid by the name of Chris Gonzalez Jacobo, lineman, one of my best friends. And in front of him, you're definitely going to shake your head on this one, was our boy Eddie Cabrera.
Oh no!
So I sit down, and obviously I'm the new kid on the block. And Jacobo turns around, and he goes, "Hey, you're new?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "What's your name?" And I was like, "Cody." He goes, "Where are you from?" And I was like, "Connecticut." And he goes, "Oh yeah, okay, cool." And he's like, "What's your last name?" And I go, "McKeon." And he goes, "What?" And he immediately turns around to Eddie Cabrera and he goes, "Hey, Ed, we're good. McKeon's son right here." And I was like, "Oh boy, here we go." And it just kind of went from there. It took on a life of its own.
Because Edward and Jacobo both had frequent flyer miles with your dad.
Without a doubt. They had the rewards card.
They really did, and so what better way to work yourself in? Because let's face it, your dad cast a big shadow at Columbus, and Mitzi's there and everything else that goes in with being a McKeon. But I think, and I noticed that you established yourself as Cody, not Chris's son. And that's commendable. And you very quickly became a Columbus explorer. What did you enjoy most about figuring out Columbus?
The first thing that I had never experienced, honestly, is the all boys situation. And I mean, as any transfer student would be coming into an all boys school. I was a little bit skeptical. But I mean, that to me was, I think the best part for me academically was that I got here and there really was no distractions. You're sitting in a classroom with a bunch of dudes that are, we're all kind of going in the same direction. We're all just trying to learn something, get through high school. So there was that, I'm not sure what the word is, but it was just a little bit more lack of distractions, and it was just the ability to focus more that I really think was the biggest benefit. And then what I say every year at back to school night to my, parents in my classrooms is the best part about this school happens when you graduate, the brotherhood and the camaraderie. And it's funny because I think being a McKeon, I kind of get this a little bit extra, but I'll meet alumni that I've never laid eyes on in my life. And as soon as they know that I went to Columbus, like we're immediately friends. And then when they find out that I'm a McKeon, then it's a little dicey from there. But for the most part, it's good.
I'm sure you've been through this where somebody asks if you're related to Mr. McKeon, and the standard response to that is, why? Why do you want to know?
Yeah, it can go one of two ways. And I remember when I got down here, I would go out, on Friday nights and stuff like that. And I would meet these kids that they're like, "You're McKeon's son?" "Well, your dad threw me out of school." And I'm like, okay, what's coming next?
Exactly.
But, surprisingly, the one thing I always heard from that was kids would always say, he threw me out of school, but I deserved it.
I deserved it.
Yeah. And that was a really shocking thing for me when I got down here, that a lot of these kids would say that and they're like, no, but I deserved it.
I think, not even going as severe as getting thrown out of school, but, whatever disciplinary actions were taken, if you follow up without, or they'll just say it themselves, like you say, well, yeah, I deserved it. I was an idiot.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And what I remember about you, Cody, and you may have gotten it from your dad, is you just had an innate love of history.
Absolutely.
We had a lot of fun in our history class, and it was classic Columbus. We learned a lot and all of that, and by the time you were a senior, you would fit right in. And you were fortunate to have some good history teachers at Columbus.
The best. Yeah, the best. I mean, I'll tell you, as much as I love the subject in itself, I really, and not just because I'm sitting here on a podcast with you, but I mean, it was teachers like yourself and Trujillo that really made history come alive for me. And it really wasn't, really wasn't like going to a history class. It was like I always called it storytelling time, because you get in there and it was like, the way you guys would talk about these historical figures was like that they were fictional characters, and you'd make it like I was eager to come to class of like, what's the next episode? Like, what's going to happen to these guys? Which I could have opened up Google and figured it out myself. But yeah, I put a testament to my love for history in the teachers that I had.
We were talking yesterday, everybody that's gone into education has had that moment when they realized, oh, I want to do this. Some come later, some come early. I came very early, thanks to Dr. Burris. When did you realize, hey, I might want to be a teacher and I might want to do this? When did it happen to you?
Well, the joke I always say with that, because obviously being a teacher, I've been asked that several times, is I kind of feel like this is the family business, My dad is an educator. My mom's an educator. My grandfather was a superintendent. I mean, it just goes down the list of education. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to ride the school bus to my mom's school. She was a kindergarten and preschool teacher. And I would ride the bus to her school. I was like in second or third grade at the time. And when I would get there, she would put me with a group of kindergartners that were kind of like, learning small things, maybe sight words or something like that. And she'd give me a small group of kids to work with on my own. Looking back, she was probably having me do that to kind of strengthen my own skills. But yeah, I mean, I really fell in love with it. And it's kind of what every teacher says. It was that aha moment when you finally teach a kid and they get it. And it's like at a young age, I started to get that euphoria of like, man, I taught that, and it's just, it's such a rewarding feeling. And then, I think it took a little while for me to figure out what age group I wanted to teach. But the fact that I wanted to be in a classroom and educating has been there since, I would say, maybe first or second grade.
Wow, that's really early.
Yeah.
That's really early, and it may very well be the family business. Sure, that makes perfect sense. So you graduate from Columbus. You had a great time. Talk about going to college and your path back to Columbus.
Okay. So actually, this is something I'm super open about, and I talk about with my students all the time, because everyone's path is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And we like to think that it's a cookie cutter: 4 years of high school, leave high school, 4 years of college, jump into the work world. But when I graduated from high school and I immediately enrolled in Miami-Dade College, I started taking some classes, and actually my stepmom Mitzi said something to me that always kind of resonated in my head. And she goes, listen, college is an investment in yourself, and you need to decide if you're making a good investment or a bad investment. And that always really stuck with me. And it got to the point that I realized that, like, I don't know if I'm making a good investment right now. So I put a pause on my education, and I went into the work world. And it's funny because I basically learned the lesson that everybody had already told me, that you're really going to be working your tail off just to try to make ends meet and make a few dollars, where if you go and you get that degree, man, it really opens a lot of doors for you. So it definitely took a while. It took a little bit of coaxing for me to get back into school. But I jumped back in to finish my AA at Dade. I can't off the top of my head remember what year it was that I finished there. But as soon as I finished the AA, I transferred into Liberty University, and I finished their online program for an education degree. And I graduated there maybe 2019. Yeah.
How many schools did you apply to get an educational position?
So it's funny because coming out of high school, I didn't take any advice. Again, very stubborn McKeon.
This stubbornness is a trait that particularly applies to the patriarch of your family.
Yes. I think it's a male hereditary problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't take any advice coming out of high school, and I applied to one school. And it was the one school that I felt I was going to get in, and I felt I had some connections there. And one school, and I got denied by one school. So that's why I ended up at Dade. But when I was transferring out of Dade and really looking to finish my degree, I listened to some old advice and I applied to a few places. But I had a little bit of criteria. Like I knew I wanted to, do it online, but I wanted to go to a school that had, like, and this sounds crazy, but I wanted to go to a school that had like a football team and had a basketball team, and like it was a school, So like if I ever wanted to do homecoming or be a real alumni, like I had that option. So that was what I looked for, and that's kind of how I landed at Liberty.
Okay, so I remember when you wanted to come back to Columbus, and Mr. Pugh made it very clear that you're going to start as a permanent sub, and nothing's guaranteed, and you're going to have to earn everything you get. You're an alumni, that always helps. And one thing I noticed without any doubt, you were willing to work. It was clear you had an objective. You wanted to be a classroom teacher, but you knew it wasn't going to happen overnight. And so talk about, working your way up at Columbus High School, because when you come in as a permanent sub and you're an alumni and you're Chris's son, you're going to get a lot of grunt work. And you did it. And how did that benefit you?
Immensely. I'll never forget. And when I sat with my interview with Pugh, there was two things that he said that stuck in my brain. The first one was that I'm hiring you as a permanent sub. And it's funny because he now denies this when I tell him this story, but I swear this is the truth. He said to me, he goes, hey, listen, he goes, you have 3 years. You have 3 years to get yourself into a classroom, because at that point, like, I was maybe a semester away from finishing the degree. So he goes, you have 3 years. He goes, because I'm not hiring you to be a career sub. He goes, after 3 years, if you are not in a position to get into the classroom, I'm going to fire you. And he goes, and that's between you and me. That has nothing to do with your dad. And I've always responded to tough love like that. So I was like, okay, I'm in. And then the second thing that he said that day was, he goes, listen, he goes, there is no job description for who you are. Your job is that you work for Columbus, and you need to do what Columbus needs from you. And he told me, he was like, listen, there's days where I, as the principal, walk around and I pick up trash. And I was like,
Yeah.
Okay, listen, I'll do it. And you know what? That wasn't lip service. I see it all the time. I mean, he's walking around, he'll be walking with some type of VIP family or whatever it may be. And he will stop and pick up trash. And I a leader like that, like I'll always work for. And my dad told me too, when I got the job here, was, hey, listen, don't say no to anything. Just whatever you can do to be around and be seen, just do it. And I'll tell you, I was raised by an Italian immigrant. My grandfather, who was a really hardworking guy. My dad's dad was a really hardworking man. So it's in my blood. It's just, they need something to be done. That's what I was here for. And that's what I felt really was my job as a permanent sub. And it worked out.
It did. And you did all the grunt work. You put in the hours. And how excited were you to get that opportunity to go into the classroom?
You have no idea. And it's kind of a cool story on how I got it, because Sarah Pita was in the middle of her maternity leave. And She called me and she goes, hey, listen, I'm missing, I think it was like the first 2 or 3 months of school. And she goes, would you be comfortable subbing my class permanently and teaching? And I was like, yes. Because I felt like not only is this me being the yes man and saying like, yeah, I'll take the job, but this also is like, hey, this is my my tryout. This is your opportunity to see who I am as a teacher. And I'll tell you, God bless her, because she was such a resource. Even while she was on maternity leave, there wasn't a time I called her for help and she didn't answer. And I got through those 3 months and she came back, and I remember she sat with me and she goes, Cody, she goes, I'll be honest. She goes, I was expecting you to get the work done and have them get some assignments. She goes, but I wasn't expecting them to be this far along on the material. And she was really, really happy with how serious I took that sub job. And I told her, I was like, this is all I wanted to do. And then I want to say it was the very next year when she decided that she wasn't going to return back to school.
Yeah.
The way she tells the story, obviously I wasn't in the room, is that when she met with Pew for her resignation, she told Pew, and Pew goes, well, I guess I got to find myself a history teacher. And she goes, no, you don't. She goes, you already have him here. You need to hire Cody McKeon. And so to this day, and I'll say it here so that it's taken down on record, is I do owe this to Sarah Pita. She's the one who pushed me into the spot.
Yeah, you owe it to Sarah, and there's another great Columbus family right there, obviously. But the point is, you passed the audition.
Absolutely.
You got the opportunity, and you didn't mess it up. And we all remember how it is. You may have only been a day ahead of the kids, or an hour ahead of the kids, but you were ahead.
Probably an hour.
Yeah, but you were prepared, and you found your way. How hard was it, Cody, stepping in like that?
It was hard. I'm not gonna lie. It was really, really hard. Like you said, it just trying to, because I always felt that I was gonna be an American history guy, like I had a choice.
Yeah.
But I was put into world history, which wasn't one of my favorite parts of history when I was a kid, which it's funny, and now has become one of my favorites. But I was really just trying to learn the material. I tried to stay a chapter ahead of what I was teaching. But my thing was, when I would teach, I had very little confidence in it. And Sarah was a honors teacher, so I had some kids in there who they really knew their stuff. And it's funny because I got some advice from other teachers that year, and they go, listen, these kids are really smart. And if you don't know something, just tell them you don't know it. And take that opportunity to go and look up the answer together. We're only human. And that kind of settled me a lot. And then the kids that year, which I would assume now they're probably like sophomores or juniors in college. The kids that year were just, they were so good to me, and they really helped. I think they smelled the blood in the water that I was a first year teacher trying it out. So, but they were good to me. They let me live.
The jackals circle. Yes, they do. But the jackals only attack weakness. Mm-hmm. And if you don't show weakness, or at least fake it till you make it, you're going to be okay. And a lot of us have spent a career faking it till we make it, So let me ask you, Cody, dealing with the young kids, everybody's different. We got people at school that they only want to teach the young kids. We got other people at school, well, like myself, if I didn't teach seniors, I would have been fired in an hour. Everybody has their niche. Are you comfortable with the young kids, or would you like to someday maybe teach the older kids?
The way I say it is I'm an educator. You put me in a group of whatever kids and I'll figure it out. Right now I'm really enjoying my freshman guys. And this year I took on freshman basketball. So I'm really just kind of immersing myself into like the freshmen. But if one day I get into like a U.S. history or something and I get juniors or, seniors, it's definitely a change of the classroom. But I'd be comfortable anyway. I like teaching, and I think my strongest point as a teacher is the rapport that I can build with the students. So, to answer the question honestly, I think I could do it at any level, but right now I'm comfortable with the freshmen.
And I think it's sometimes good to teach something that's not in your wheelhouse, so you weren't expecting. We've all had that happen, and it does make you a better teacher. When you have to get out of your comfort zone. I had to teach European Civ one year with no warning. You know how it was. Oh, you're teaching European Civ. Okay. You just say okay and you do it. And you find a way to get by. But given your druthers, what would be the class you'd love to teach? Given your druthers.
What's funny is after I had you for class, I always thought that U.S. foreign policy would have been such a cool class to teach. But I'll be honest, man, you're walking in the footsteps of giants when you do that. So I don't know if I'd want to touch that. World War II to me is something that is just everybody knows and everybody studies, and there's documentaries all over the place. But a small niche thing that I've really, really come to enjoy is kind of like the Industrial Revolution into like World War I.
Wow.
Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of a not talked about time period. I felt like a lot of kids kind of miss that, and then they jump right into World War II, and no one has any idea why Germany's so mad, Wow. So we got to rewind a little bit and figure out what happened. So that's actually the last lesson that I do in my world history classes is World War I. And I've really enjoyed it. And I tell the kids every year, I go, guys, I could make a whole year class off of this because there's just so much stuff.
That's a really interesting niche, bro.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. And actually now there's so much stuff that's coming out. And like they just redid All Quiet on the Western Front, which it's the kids love it, And
this is serendipitous. I don't know if you saw on the news last night, but they finally yesterday in D.C. dedicated a World War I memorial. I could not believe that and it occurred to me, man, finally. There's obviously no World War I veterans still living, but they finally got their memorial. So that's a very interesting niche. We'll talk more about this because that's pretty cool.
And it's funny. I just found out that I actually have a little skin in the game there. My grandfather's dad, when he came over here as an Italian immigrant, he wanted to get American citizenship, and the quickest way he could do that was enlist for World War I. He went over there, fought, came back. Congratulations.
We have something in common. My grandfather on my mom's side was in the Argonne Forest in World War I. So There you go. Served our country. You talked about basketball. We'll get to that. But in terms of the things you just do whatever is asked or not asked, you just do it. Talk about being equipment manager for the football team, because that Cowboy does it now. Bernie Brewer's done it for half a century. That's not an easy job. And I never asked you this, how did you end up becoming equipment manager?
Well, for those of you who know our illustrious coach, Dave Dunn, he likes to volunteer you what you're going to be doing. And it's funny because I had just met him that year that he came here. I had never met him before. And he's like, hey, what do you do during the fall? And I was like, get ready for basketball season. And he was like, why don't you be the equipment manager? And like any young guy, I go, is there money involved? And he was like, yeah, there is. And I was like, okay, then I'm in. And I kind of jumped in with, listen, I love to watch football, but if you want to talk schemes and plays, I know next to nothing. But I know how to work a screwdriver, so I was like, hey, I can do that in a washing machine. So I was like, all right, I'll be the equipment guy all day long.
And there's much more to the job than people have any idea. They don't know what goes into that job. Did you enjoy it?
Absolutely. I had a blast. And it's funny because, some of the younger football coaches here, they always give me a hard time that I came in, I got 2 rings, and then I just left. And, why would I stay? But no, that season, I mean, well, really like 2 seasons that I did it. It really means a lot to me. And like, that was our first state championship. So like, what a year to be a part of it. And some of the guys that were on that team, some of the nicest kids I've ever met. And then the kicker, I mean, I met my wife that year. She was the Lourdes cheer coach. So I guess I owe that to Dunn, right?
You don't want to be in debt to Dunn for anything. I mean, that's for sure.
I'm going to regret saying that.
Yes, he mentioned you got paid. He didn't mention that it was tip money at Denny's that you got paid, but nonetheless. Well, I was going to go to basketball, but you just mentioned it. Great story on how you met your wife, and like most Columbus guys, you outkicked your coverage. And you're a self-aware man. You know that.
Yeah, big time.
So talk about how you guys met, because it's a classic Columbus Lourdes scenario here.
Oh, it really is, and it goes all the way back to when I was in high school. So when I was a senior, she was a freshman at Lourdes, and I didn't know who she was, but apparently she knew who I was. And she always tells this one story about working like a summer camp, and she like specifically went to go work at the concession stand so she could meet Cody McKeon, which, spoiler, it never took off. I had no idea who she was. But whenever, she goes away to college, I go away, I do my thing. I come back as the equipment manager. She decides to come back to Lourdes as a cheer coach. And I mean, hey, you see a beautiful girl standing on the sideline. And I was like, I'm going to go over there for a little while and just say hello, make sure they have everything. Every once you need a bottle of water or something like that.
You never know what they might, a shoelace, whatever.
Trying to be a chivalrous Columbus man, So I walk over there and we just start talking, and funny enough, we start dating. And one day I'm walking up to the equipment room, and Ryan Rodriguez, one of the linemen for UM right now, he grabs me and he goes, "Hey, coach, I've been hearing a rumor." And I was like, "What? A rumor about what?" And he goes, "A rumor about you." And I was like, "Dude, what are you hearing?" And he goes, "I heard you're dating a Lourdes cheerleader." And I go, Ryan, no, the cheer coach, the coach. And I was like, "Can you please go debunk that rumor?" I was like, "That's a problem for everybody. Like, let's fix that." And he goes, "I'll never forget it. Ryan, oh my God, what a great kid." He goes, "Oh God, all right, coach. I was so nervous." And I was like, "No, man, it's the coach."
No, I remember when that rumor was floating around, like Ryan, one of the kids, "Hey, sir, did you know that Cody McKeon's dating a cheerleader?" I said, "No, it's not a cheerleader. No, stop." But that's classic Columbus charm and charisma.
Absolutely.
No fear. Can I help you? Do you need a bottle of water? Well, it certainly has worked out.
Absolutely.
And speaking of Coach Dunn, your guys' wedding was really joyous. But when Dunn asked Mitzi to dance in front of your dad, it was one of the greatest moments of my life, because your dad does not dance, as you know. But when Dunn takes Mitzi on the dance floor, he had no choice. I think your dad still resents that.
Well, I have a video of my dad dancing after the fact, and he doesn't look the happiest I've ever seen him. I'll tell you that.
No, despite Dunn's great accomplishments, he came very close to getting fired that night. But that was wonderful. Do you guys, how hard is it not to talk school when you get home, when you're both in education? I mean, that's an easy trap to fall into. Do you guys try to avoid that, or what? How do you work it?
I'll be honest, since we're both kind of newer teachers. She's been teaching for about 3 or 4 years now. I've been teaching for about 5 years. We do bounce a lot of ideas off each other.
Okay.
I think a lot of our main conversation is really on the coaching end, because she's a cheer coach, I'm a basketball coach. So that is a main topic of conversation. But yeah, we try to separate, but I think it's just become our lives. She's so ingrained at Lourdes and I'm so ingrained at Columbus. I mean, at this point, it's like a character trait.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. All right, here we go. Basketball. Again, the family business. When did you realize coaching could be cool? I mean, you wanted to teach or be in a classroom from an early age. Okay, well, coaching is just teaching outdoors or on a court or whatever. Yeah. Did you have a similar urge to coach as you did to teach, or what?
Well, I think like every young man, I genuinely felt I was going to the NBA by way of a division.
Yeah, a lot of Irish white guys in the NBA.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Scalabrini might have been the last one.
Yeah.
But I genuinely felt that. And then, it got to a point where the writing was on the wall, and it wasn't going to happen. So I swallowed that pill. And, like I said earlier, like I've always felt like I wanted to be an educator and I always wanted to teach people things. And if I knew something, I wanted to be able to convey that to somebody. And I know I'm going to regret saying this, but my dad is one of the best basketball coaches I've ever been around. So I learned a heck of a lot about the game of basketball. And it's funny, my brother says it all the time because he's not as much of a basketball guy as we are. And he goes, man, I wish I could see a basketball game the way you guys see it. Because a lot of times when I'm watching a game, I'm not even really watching the ball. I'm kind of watching everything else that's happening.
Away from the ball. Yeah.
So I think that was kind of an early thing too, of that. As soon as I was going to hang up the sneakers, I was going to put the whistle around my neck and give it a shot. So, fun fact, at senior year, I was Brother Kevin's assistant coach here for freshmen. And then I jumped in right after I graduated with my dad, and I was with my dad for 12 years until I left.
Talk about what it is for a young guy to go from an all-boys school and everything to coaching girls basketball, because you coached at Lourdes with your old man, you coached at Riviera, you coached at Coral Reef. What's that adjustment like? What do you enjoy about coaching girls?
Well, to answer that question first, what I love coaching about girls is if you show them that you genuinely care about them and you are genuinely looking out for their best interest, like you have a friend for life and they will be loyal to you to the end of time. And that's one thing I've always really, really appreciated about coaching girls. The other thing about coaching girls is a lot of them walk into the gym on day one not claiming to be any good at all, as opposed to boys walk in that they are Michael Jordan, the second coming. Yeah. So they believe that, hey, this guy knows more than I do, so let me listen to him and I'll just do what he asks. So I've always appreciated that. But in terms of the transition, it was a tough one because obviously being a boy going through boys basketball, like I've only been coached like one way, and that was pretty aggressive. And with girls, listen, you can be aggressive with girls, but you have to earn that respect and you have to have that rapport with them first, because if you just start yelling at them, then they just think that you don't like them. But a lot of the girls, I could bring in all the players that I had at Lourdes, and I coach them like boys. I get after them. I hold them accountable for certain things. I yell at them just as I would yell at some of the guys, and they appreciate it and they understand it's coming from a good place. And I had read a book that said everything your coach never told you because you're a girl, and it basically said like don't coach players like girls, coach them like athletes.
Nice.
And it worked out for me, and I've kind of stuck to that ever since.
Doug Collins, who was a great player and a great coach in his own right, has a saying, don't ever set a rule that you won't enforce with your best player. Do you agree with that philosophy?
100%. 100%. it's funny because that's one of the things that my wife and I go back and forth on. She's big on like a lot of rules and having a contract and things like that. And honestly, there's a lot of benefits to things like that because it's there and it's in writing and you know when you broke a rule. I kind of live on a different side of that of like I have very general rules, and if they break them, consequences will be applied as things happen. Simple reason being, sometimes you have a kid who's your best player on the team, and sometimes you got to throw the book at him because you'll gain a lot more respect from the rest of your players because they go, oh man, he's going after that guy and he scores all our points. I mean, he means business about, these rules. So yeah, I couldn't agree with that more, honestly.
The women's game has changed tremendously in the last decade.
Really?
Yes, the skill level will never be the same just because, but I mean, you look at what Caitlin Clark is doing. I mean, she can shoot, she can pass, she can dribble, she can rebound. I mean, it's made the women's game, it's elevated it to a whole new level.
Yeah, you see them right now. They've gone from, playing in smaller like field houses to full arenas. So yeah, it's without a doubt, it's booming right now. And I love that because you can see at the youth ages right now, girls basketball is kind of hurting because for years and years and years of kind of taking the backseat to boys basketball, a lot of younger girls lost interest. And I think right now we're starting to see that pendulum swing back, and a lot of younger girls are starting to be interested. And I mean, basketball is tough for the youth to begin with, because it's hard to score a goal on a 10-foot basket if you don't have the strength to get it up there, whether you're a boy or a girl.
Correct.
And boys develop that strength earlier so they can jump into the game where girls might not score their first basket until into fourth grade or fifth grade, and that's tough to stay consistent with something that you're not really finding success in yet.
How much did you borrow from your old man? And how much is your own philosophy?
You're trying to get me to really inflate his ego a little bit here.
No. I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the guidance I got from all coaches in every sport is, listen to everybody, absorb things from everybody, but you still have to be your own coach. And there's a lot of things. I mean, in terms of X's and O's, like, I don't know if I've really met a better person than my dad in X's and O's and plays. So those are things that if I ever see, and now I'm really giving up my secrets, if I go into his office and I see that he has printed out any plays or if he's written down plays, I take a quick picture with my phone just because I want to see what he's thinking. Obviously we have personnel differences, so a lot of times it doesn't match up. But in that regard, offensively, I do steal a lot. But I'm a huge UConn fan, so I steal a lot from Gino Auriemma and Danny Hurley, and I steal from everybody. I'm a mix of a lot of people, but definitely heavily influenced by my dad.
Well, I think everybody is. You can be a teacher, a coach, a musician, a writer, whatever. You're going to steal from other people.
Yeah.
But the key is you have to find your own groove and your own style.
Yeah.
I wanted to be Dr. Burris, sure, but I had to be me. So I know exactly what you're saying. All right, transitioning back to Columbus, you're going to be the freshman basketball coach this year. How do you feel about getting involved with the program at a time we're at a stratospheric level? Let's face it.
Yeah.
Nobody ever would have seen this coming at Columbus High School. So how did this all unfold?
Over lunch, I was sitting next to Rick Landera during one of our professional developments at the beginning of the year, and we were just kind of small talk. And I told him, I was like, "Hey, what are you working on today?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm trying to find a freshman basketball coach." And I told him, I was like, "You happen to be talking to a coach?" He's like, "Yeah, but you coach girls." And I was like, well, and the freshman boys have a very interesting schedule that a lot of their games are on Saturdays. And a lot of their practices are before school. So I was like, it kind of works out, you know? And I told him, I go, I don't know how much time I'd be able to dedicate to like anything with JV or varsity. I was like, but if you need someone to fill in, like I'll take that spot. I talked with Andrew. Andrew was good with it, and we kind of were off and running. A few days later, I kind of realized that trying to do the core and the Columbus thing at the same time, along with other responsibilities that I've kind of acquired this year, it wasn't going to work out at Coral Reef. So I ended up, kind of resigning or stepping down over there. And now I'm just full-fledged with the freshman boys.
Conversation in the Columbus cafeteria. I mean, I don't think there's a more organic place than Columbus for these things. They just happen.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I know how excited you are about that. You just mentioned something in passing, other responsibilities. You're heading up Rho Kappa now.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's very cool. How did that come about?
Well, the legendary Mary McCullough retired last year, and again, walking in the footsteps of giants here. So somebody had to take that role. So I was lucky enough to share a wall with Mary for the last 2 years, and she was an incredible resource to me as a teacher. And she kind of came to me and she was like, "Hey, would you be interested in taking this over?" And she goes, "Listen, I'll walk you through everything. I'll tell you everything you need to do. Even when the lady's retired and she's still very much on it and willing to help." But yeah, I think she felt that I was very interested in the way she did things, and I was very interested in being a part of the department and not just kind of being a teacher that leaves at 3:00. So she immediately said, "Hey, I think you'd be perfect for this. I think this is something that you should do." And then I spoke with Javi Hermida, my department head, and he loved the idea. And I've been trying to look for more, leadership positions, and there it is.
I think it's really great to have a young guy like yourself in charge of Rho Kappa. And yes, when in doubt at Columbus, just say yes. Just say yes. And great things will happen. Speaking of that, Cody, we're in a position now, and your dad and Dave and I have talked about this for a long time. We are cresting, you might want to say, the legend period, where a lot of the legends have retired, are going to retire. It's just a matter of time, and we need the next generation to step up. And that's one of the reasons that Melissa and we talked about this. We wanted to start season 6 with that in mind, the passing of the torch, because it's incredibly important. You said earlier, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. Well, it's time for the younger guys to step up. What would your advice be to the up and coming guys in your era to succeed and push Columbus and make sure that our legacy continues? What would you say to them?
Very simply, just get involved. Whether it be as simple as going out and being in the parking lot for dismissal, or taking over a club, or working a football game, or coaching in football or in a sport. The more these kids get to see you, the more they build a relationship with you, the more they feel that they can rely on you. And then I feel like once that ball's in motion, it just starts rolling. And it just kind of takes on a life of its own. I think really the only way I started my footsteps here was just by, like you said, saying yes to things. And I started to build relationships with students, and started to build relationships with faculty members. And now people ask you to do things, ask you for help. Students ask you for help, for references. And then before you know it, you look around and you're just totally ingrained in everything around you. And people are relying on you for things. And it's a good feeling. So, the simplest advice I could give is literally just find something and get involved. Pew said it best. He goes, you got to find your thing here.
And you've done and not blowing smoke, you've done a tremendous job stepping out of your father's considerable shadow. people don't call you Chris's son anymore. They call you Cody. And I think that is a statement in and of itself. And I'm very proud of you, and I'm very, very happy for you. What's the best part of being a Columbus teacher, Cody? What is it? What is the best part?
Geez, this might be part 2 of the podcast right here. I listen. The kids, it's that simple. It's literally the kids. It's so much fun to be here, and it's funny. Like I could be having my worst day, and I'll have kids cycling into my classroom, and I'll be sitting there with a scowl on my face, upset about God knows what. And one of these kids will just say something, one of those little golden nuggets that comes out that they're not trying to be funny. They're not. They're just being them. And you sit there and you're like, this is my job. This is what I have, and it makes for a very, very easy day of work. There's very few days that I come home upset.
You get paid for buffoonery.
Well, 100%. I'm like the ringleader. You call me Barnum and Bailey. Here I
am. Last question, Cody. It's become the traditional ending question. What does being Marist mean to Cody McKeon?
The biggest thing about being Marist that really sticks with me every year when we do our PDs and when we have these conversations is the idea of loving all of our students and loving them all equally, because nowadays I think more than ever every student is so different, and every student absorbs and takes in love in different ways. Some kids want you to be flickers of early Columbus and want you to be really, really tough with them and really aggressive with them. But some kids, man, they need a pat on the back, and they need a friend. And I think that's the one thing that's really resonated with me, and keeping that in my head, I think has really helped me a lot here. Just knowing that every kid needs somebody, whether it's somebody just to listen to them, or maybe it's someone that needs advice. And which is funny, that's something I learned when I was teaching or coaching the girls over at Lourdes. Was some days they just want you to listen. They don't want any advice at all. And you just sit there and you just nod your head and you smile and okay, we're done, and they move on, and it made them feel good. But some days they need that advice. Some days they want to talk and they want to go back and forth. So without a doubt, the most important thing about being Marist for me is loving all those kids and loving them equally.
Everybody needs somebody, and we're very, very fortunate that they have you to go to. So, Cody, this has been a lot of fun. I thank you. Long may you run. You got a lot of years ahead of you, and only good things are going to happen. So, thank you again. Explore Nation, I hope you've enjoyed this looking back, looking into the future. It's been a real pleasure. We've got some great guests lined up this year, but we started with a really, really good one. So until next time, buenos tiempos and adelante. Thanks, Cody.
Thank you.